Parents of Reddit, why don't y'all understand that talking back is just us trying to explain our side of the story? My mom would yell at me just for reading this post. Don't text me in that tone. One of the memories that still rankles from when I was 5 or 6, getting told off for answering back in class. I had no idea what that meant, so I asked what's answering back. Teacher yelled at me for continuing to answer back. I never did get a coherent explanation of what I was actually being punished for. But I don't understand why you are punishing me. Stop screaming back at me right now, or I'll punish you more for that. Not a parent but a young teacher, 24. I think this is true half the time. I think adults do jump to conclusions and don't really listen to y'all. I also think sometimes the tone matters a lot. It's weird, some parents are super strict and think explaining is arguing. I try to understand this with my students as long as they are using a respectful tone. Started reading this like finally an adult who gets it before remembering I'm 26. Depends on the situation. I can see it from both angles. I'm not a parent, but I am a teacher. I've always let kids tell me their sides. It's when I don't agree with how they handled something that all heck breaks loose. For me, talking back would be more like insulting someone, such as asking a kid to go by their desk and they reply with I don't have to listen to you. You're not my mama. I always want to return the favor and say thank the heavens and all that is good. I'm your mama, but I resist the urge every time. I very much agree with you. My parents allow for your side to be spoken. However, the way my brother speaks to my parents in his aggressive tone is when my parents lose their crap. I'm a single parent with a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter, and both of them are slightly autistic, so probably I'm not the right person to answer this. But neither of my kids have ever talked back to me. If we disagree about something, we talk about it. They almost never change my mind, but I am pretty good at calming them down. My style of parenting is to explain where I'm coming from. I've never said, because I said so as a conversation ender in my life. I always try to make it very clear why I'm making an unpopular decision and what it is I'm trying to accomplish. I can give you a recent example. My daughter has proven herself to be irresponsible with the internet. She gets into fights, and she has bullied, and she has been bullied, and she's made up stories about how horrible her life is just to get sympathy from strangers. She has deliberately antagonized others so badly that one of them put up a series of videos on YouTube urging her to kill herself. So I've taken away her internet privileges, and I've told her that when I return them, it will be with monitoring software installed. She is furious about this, and she has been raging and saying many hurtful things. Not in a talking back sort of way, more like just being mean and trying to hurt my feelings. But I stay calm, and I tell her, look, on 3 separate occasions now, I haven't paid as much attention as I should have, and you got in trouble. So much trouble that you started cutting yourself, and you told your therapist that you were seriously considering suicide. It is my job as a parent to keep you safe, and when you have the internet unsupervised, you continually put yourself into unsafe situations. If I continue to let that happen, then my worst fear is that one day I will come home to find your lifeless body, and I will have failed as a parent. It gives me no pleasure to take away your internet. I want nothing more than to feel comfortable trusting you again, but you've proven to me repeatedly that I can't do that right now. So you've left me no other option. It's something we're still trying to figure out and work through. But the point is, I don't yell. I try not to be unreasonable. I just present my decisions from my perspective so that she can hopefully understand my thought process. And I do find that it calms her down. And that other than those occasional flare-ups, our relationship is not toxic. So I guess probably none of this has anything to do with what you're talking about. Sorry about that. Hopefully another parent that does yell at their kids can give you a better answer about why they do it. I grew up with some fairly unreasonable parents, or punishments that were just never outright explained like that to me. Just want you to know that I would have given the world for you as a parent. Seriously, you sound like a kick-ass mom. Not a parent either, but a formerly sassy teenager who thought my parents just didn't get me, etc. Tone attitude is probably your issue. If you are genuinely, calmly trying to explain your side of a story and your parents are claiming you talk back, then that is their problem. But if you're being snarky, condescending, sarcastic, getting overly defensive or raising your voice, it's going to be considered talking back just for that. And it's a pretty good life lesson. You'll quickly have to learn that a bratty attitude, even if you're completely in the right, isn't going to fly with your professors or bosses. Edit. Since this got a bit of traction, I will just clarify that the word most likely in my post is significant. This post definitely does not apply to anyone with abusive parents, parents who come out the gate screaming at you, etc. I'm talking about things like having an inappropriate reaction to a discussion, trying to get the last word in, just having a generally bratty attitude to a normal discussion argument over something you did they think you did. Comma isn't going to fly with your professors or bosses, or friends, neighbors, people you want to help you, your family, or your significant other. Lol no, this is talking back chat. Dad, hey boy, keep your hands to yourself. Boy, fine, I'll never touch anything again. Dad, mate, can you not kick your sister please? Boy, fine, I'll punch her instead. Dad, hey mate, please don't sit on that, you'll break it. Boy, stares into dad's eyes as he lifts his feet and puts his whole weight on the thing. Dad, can you put your stuff in your bag? Boy, starts loading his entire wardrobe, toys, everything he can find into his school bag. You said my stuff. This is my stuff. That was literally just this morning, in the 30 minutes I spend getting my kids ready for school. Or the whole bit where you don't want to have a 15-minute argument over something you tell the kid to do every day and you just short-circuit it by telling them to stop arguing and just do it as soon as they start. I had my daughter when I was 19, so now I'm 35 and she's 15, but I remember pretty dang clearly how being a teenager felt. I've also been teaching 5th grade for 11 years. There is 100% a difference, and honestly, it has mostly to do with your tone and body language and phrasing. If you are using a whining crappy tone, if you are rolling your eyes with your arms crossed, if you are saying things like you only think that because, you're gonna have a bad time. Learn to calm your tone and hold your body neutral. Learn to use I statements. Use the phrase I understand what you are saying, I was thinking, or I realize how this looks, but what I was trying to do was. This is advice for people of all ages. I let my kids talk back as long as they are respectful. It's important. I want them to know how to debate their side and never just accept what they are told without question. Mostly, they still have to follow what's said to begin with. However, sometimes I have perceived something all wrong and they change my mind. You have to teach your kids they have agency over their lives. This is what we need. My mom never lets me explain my story. I'm a parent of an almost 8-year-old. Let me tell you, sometimes I am just so sick of the constant attempted negotiation, the begging, the assumption that every little thing is up for debate. I lose my patience, and I don't want to hear it anymore. Just do what I dang asked you to do. In most cases, what your child may see as explaining their side is often a poor case of justification. In most situations, I'm already well apprised of what happened and the discussion with my child is a teachable moment. The second the child gets into the yeah, but headspace, their ability to learn and grow immediately shuts down. If we've reached the point where a heart-to-heart is necessary, it's often more about learning to accept responsibility for the results and consequences than the vetting of a story. As long as you're talking back or explaining, you're not listening to the lesson I'm trying to teach. That being said, I've learned that my kids are far more likely to stop and listen once they felt they've been heard. So I always give them time to do whatever explaining they feel they need first, and then do my teachable moment. Because, when we hear screaming across the house about whose turn it is to play Mario Maker 2, we don't care about your side of the story. You two have forgotten to treat each other with respect. You've broken the peace of the house, and the switch gets locked away for the afternoon. It all comes down to respect. Luckily, we're big on respect of the other and ownership of actions and feelings in our house. I listen to my daughter explain her reasoning and feelings. Unless it's abusive to someone else, including me, or dangerous, shut up and get in the car, because that crazy man has a knife. Ultimately, I'm both responsible for her safety and legally responsible for her actions, so it's not a fair situation at all times. Sometimes I have to take more crap than is fair to me, and sometimes she gets frustrated by being cut off. Ultimately, she listens on the rare occasion I demand something, and she knows I will apologize and explain why, and then we can talk about how it all felt. It's not rocket surgery. Treat each other in life like works in progress, trying to do our best. Give the space to be wrong, and only draw a hard no line when a bad behavior is a pattern. It's worth the momentary discomfort to build the kind of trust where you can all be free to learn and grow. I'm only 19 and not a parent, but sometimes the argument itself just doesn't matter. Yes, he may have hit you first, but who cares, because no one was seriously harmed and it was just a fight over the Xbox. Some things are more important, like not having the knee-jerk reaction to hit back. You'd have won the argument if you went straight to your mum instead of hitting back, or at least making your parent aware of it, then giving in. This will get respect from your parent. This means the next time you fight with your brother, there you won, and you have a parent to back you up. I want to point out that there are plenty of times that the other side of the story needs to be heard, but certainly with my parents, I don't know about yours, they only tell me not to talk back if they know it doesn't matter. Sometimes they've been wrong, but I'll let them have their say, and I take it. Later, if it's still important, I'll come back when we've both calmed down and tell the other side of the story. And by then I'll know if it's important or not, and they'll listen because I listened to them. I also want to make clear I'm not a golden child or anything. I forget this a lot, but I want to make other people aware of it. Talking back and explaining your side of the story are two very different things. I teach my kids how to communicate. If they have questions, I answer them the best I can. Saying things like "because I said so" is bullcrap, and I don't say that to them. My father said because he is an ogre. It seemed perfectly reasonable for young me. One of my teens always feels that I don't listen to them, except I do. I always have, and I do this for all of my children. I hear their side, but if I don't agree, I'm not listening, so then the teen tries to explain again, thinking that the quantity of explanations will somehow put them in the right. All I ever want, and I am clear in my communication without yelling or snark, is for my children to take responsibility of their actions and, if necessary, to make it right. I follow this as well. If I have messed up, I apologize and do what I can to fix it. Even if the injured party is my child, it is completely normal for a teen to be egocentric, and I keep that in mind. But it is hurtful when I am accused of bad parenting simply because they don't get their way. I am just patiently waiting for them to outgrow it as they mature. There's a difference between talking back and explaining, mostly tone and attitude, and the truth. I really want to hear parents' opinions about this topic, because every time I talk back to my parents they would just find it very disrespectful and cry and yell more about it. Because sometimes we don't want to hear it. We don't care, we just want you to shut the heck up and do as you are told. Because we are tired and stressed and have a million things on our minds, and the kids have just hit the last bit of patience. Then if you are like me and this does happen, I make sure to always try and let my child explain herself. I go apologize to said kids and let them know my behavior wasn't right and to please talk to me and explain when they feel like it. It's not about talking back but the way you talk back. For example, parent, it's after curfew. Why are you home late? Kid, frick off. You're not the boss of me. Talking back and talking crap. Plus you've lost your mind. Example 2. Parent, it's after curfew. Why are you home late? Kid, sorry ma. I was having so much fun that I lost track of time. Parent, okay, but let's not make this a habit. Love you and good night. Kiss on the cheek. Explanation: kids will be kids. I used to be kid once and didn't want the fun to end. No need to get upset, just a little worried. Until it's the 5th time you've lost track of time this month, even though we've put systems in place to make sure that doesn't happen. At this point you're blatantly disregarding established rules, and there will be consequences. I always got in trouble for making excuses when trying to explain why I did or didn't do something, or even just explaining my thought process when questioned on something. And so I've developed the habit of not saying anything when pressed on issues, and then get yelled at for not participating or explaining myself. One thing I absolutely hate about not making excuses is that every explanation is a freaking excuse. This is a hard thread to read with so many people saying control your tone. I'm autistic and have ADHD, and when I get falsely accused of something, I get feels about that. I literally cannot keep my feelings out my tone, not even now at 28. If I feel attacked and frustrated, my answers will sound defensive and frustrated, especially if I try to formulate correctly. I statements etc. It's either tone or formulation for me, not both. My mom never got that and would even shut me up when she'd ask how was school and the answer was it sucked. She'd immediately go, I don't wanna hear it if you yell at me like that. I wasn't yelling, I had slightly raised my voice out of frustration. But yeah, thank you for listening, mom, and thanks for actually taking an interest in me. To all others, the smaller the kid, the harder it is for them to keep their tone straight. If an older kid has persistent issues keeping their tone straight, while actually making good points, they might have ADHD or autism like me. Telling them to watch their tone will only get them on edge extra. Listen to what they actually are saying. Summarize it shortly, I understand that, in a calm voice. Then continue the conversation calmly. That will help the other party immensely to get their tone under control. Don't just dismiss them because of their tone and make them feel like what they have to say doesn't matter. Listen actively and address the feelings, not the tone. You'll get much better results that way. If they seem to have calmed down but still have a tone, that's the moment to talk about tone, but no earlier than that. My mom said when I was younger SMTH along the lines, do you want us to yell at each other again? But it was more like her yelling and me crying for the rest of the day until like 1 AM when I fell asleep. Too real. Honestly, because it's exhausting to have to negotiate every single little point. Sometimes it would be nice to ask for something to be done and not have to argue about it happening. I always hated the one, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. What kind of parent says that? I can help. 45 years old mammy of 3, Inc. 2 teenagers that I get on well with and who are happy with how I treat them. It's not the words you use. Usually, it's the tone and the timing. Let's say, for example, you want to go to a concert, and you know they won't be on board with it. Tone, don't whine. Don't be aggressive. Don't jump on the defensive. Timing, don't wait until the last minute and spring something on them. Don't wait to explain yourself afterwards. If your parents are decent people who want the best for you, and most are, then they will be concerned about your safety, the cost, transport there and back. Sit down, with plenty of notice, and take them through your proposed plan, showing them that you've thought of all of their concerns and addressed them. When my daughter, at 15, wanted to go to her first proper concert, in a location known for drug and alcohol issues, she sat me down, told me that a group of 10 girls were hoping to go. She had saved the money to pay for her own tickets, and she had arranged that a bus would pick up all 10 at my house at 8 PM and drop them back at my house at 12 PM. One of the girls' granny was the bus driver and would make sure they went straight into the venue and came straight out, and they would stay at my house, sleeping bags on the floor, that night so I could feel secure that no one was under the influence of anything. She gave me the list of girls, 7 of whom I knew the parents quite well, and gave me the OHO numbers of the 2 mammies she knew I didn't know. I was so impressed with her organization and that she had thought of all of my concerns and had a good answer, that I let her go. The key to this working for her though, the absolute key to it, was that TJE night went pretty much as she said it would. There were no problems, they behaved well, and I've been inclined to say yes to most things since then, and will continue so long as there are no issues. She's 17 now. The occasional time I've said no, she's either accepted it with good grace, I give good reasons, or she's come up with a better plan. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. I'll listen to my kids at any time of any day, have a attitude, and the conversation is shut down. Because we aren't interested in hearing your side of the story at the time. Maybe because you're doing something dangerous, or that explaining why we need you to do something will take too long, or whatever it is you're doing needs to be stopped immediately. We have significantly more life experience than you, and it's our job to keep you safe. It's very difficult for you to believe that we just know better than you about a lot of things. We know how it feels. We've been there ourselves with our own parents. It's very frustrating, which can escalate the situation as tempers are inflamed, and sometimes you'll even be right, but most of the time we will be right and we end up having to get cross, raise our voice etc just to get you to stop speaking back and do what we've asked. I don't know your personal family situation, but this is what most parents who aren't dropkicks are trying to do. Try giving them the benefit of the doubt and then explain your side of things afterwards. Me. Kids, you both punched each other. Stop. Kids, but he, me. I don't care. Just stop. Now I'm getting dragged into a fight over who gets to hold the remote. Because half the time it's just some little crap being a smartass and not attempting to explain anything. Teenager here, 18. My parents aren't like this, thank God. But there were a couple of times I've wanted to smack a teacher because of this. Worst time was when I missed an in-class writing assignment because I went home sick and went to apologize to the teacher the next day. He told me to stop making excuses and take some responsibility. The nurse almost called 911 cause I was hallucinating. Still don't know why. Probably sleep deprivation. I have never done any kind of drug. And someone had to hold on to me so I wouldn't fall over. I wasn't even being sassy. I tried to politely explain what happened and this dickhead wouldn't let me finish my dang sentence. Dear Mr. Neil, you are the worst history teacher ever. Frick you. They do, but there is a time and place for everything. And not every rule of law in the household, and indeed, later in life, can be rebutted with yeah but. There are many instances in life you just have to accept perceived injustices and move on. Your parents not allowing talk back is preparing you for the real world, where a police officer really is not interested in your excuses of why you are speeding or parking across two handicapped places to buy beer. Sure, it's your side of the story, but you'd better keep it to yourself as you are invariably wrong and only will get yourself in more trouble. My parents always said I was arguing with them. Sweep the floor. I just did. There's nothing to sweep. Don't argue with me. Like, come on. They were already using the because I said so or because I'm the parent cards almost 24/7. They always told me this family isn't a democracy. Well, it sure as heck ain't supposed to be a dictatorship either. For my children and the students I teach, it is okay to be upset or disagree and communicate about those things. But it isn't okay to do so disrespectfully, and there is a difference, and developmentally, kids don't just magically know the difference without being taught and given the language for how to advocate for themselves in a way that will more likely lead to others listening to them. At the same time, this is complicated by the fact that there are teachers and parents that occasionally or always insist on only compliance and do not receive and honor feedback from children with as much patience as they should. Parents, record your kids when they talk about and do stuff like this. Store it, pay it forward and show it to your grandchildren and encourage them to follow their parents' example. This is a true pro-revenge. There is a respectful way to explain your side. Granted, this goes both ways and many parents forget to be respectful as well. Buckle up, folks. So the unquestioned obedience of children in a family came about thanks to feudal societies. Most hunter-gatherer societies consider children to be part of the community who contributed by learning how to become valuable members of society through play and exploration of their environment. In a feudal society, every member of the family belonged to the landowner. This meant now children had to work. So thanks to children needing to have unquestioned obedience of their parents and landowner, parenting became do this because I said so. This trend has continued into modern times, and only within the last 60+ years or so have we realized that authoritarian parenting is not the best form of parenting. Therefore, talking back is seen as questioning a parent, and kids aren't supposed to do that. My dad actually started yelling at me for talking back once. I quite calmly and politely just told him why I did what I did. Can't really remember what it was. When he started yelling, I went into the kitchen and got a ladle and hit him across the face with it. After that I told him, let me finish explaining before you yell at me. Then I ran back outside and came back home the next day and he actually apologized before I got the chance to say anything besides I'm home. So the moral of the story, don't get angry for talk back, because the kid might snap. I surfed the posts a bit and I can agree with 90% of what's said in terms of tone and body language etc. What I hope I can add is that we didn't just come into existence the moment you did, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna let my kids make the same dumb mistakes I did. Believe it or not, there is no explaining yourself in some situations. As some previous posts stated, we make the rules of the house. The reason we make the rules is because we built the house, and we built it with knowledge of past mistakes or failures. We inherently know more about life and probably already know your story. My father always told me 2 wrongs don't make a right, and it was never more clear till I had kids. Granted, there's always gonna be crappy parents, and I'm sure snippets of this will be read in the wrong tone or context, but don't jump to the conclusion your parents are crappy or don't understand. Lots of people saying that attitude is the key difference. It's often the attitude of the adult or adults that is the problem. They have authority and experience on their side. They should be the ones that be acting rationally and listening, not the other way around. If a child has the ability to reason, the adult should grow up and treat him or her as equals. There are times when sides of the story aren't actually warranted. Often, some behavior is simply unacceptable, and while a person might have reasons, there are no excuses. At the point when we are mid-lecture, the trial has concluded. Your guilt is affirmed. Your appeals process has been exhausted. Your best bet at that point is to await sentencing and plead for mercy. Arguing that you are less culpable for whatever reason is simply not a fruitful strategy at this stage. Because we are humans and we have emotions too, and right mo we are angry and not in the headspace to listen. Talking will just make us angrier. Explanations can wait until everyone has calmed down. It might seem epically unfair, but you have to realize parents are just people. We are imperfect and we reacted in the heat of the moment even though we probably shouldn't. If your parents don't listen to your explanation after the fact, then they are just emotionally stunted adult-sized children incapable of seeing things from anyone else's point of view, like my mum. In which case explaining is pointless anyway. They will never admit fault or that a situation could ever be different than how they perceived it on the moment. If your parents are mature, emotionally aware adults, they will listen to you, and if they were wrong they will apologize. Most importantly though, regardless who was at fault, they will attempt to repair their relationship with you. At this point everyone should apologize for losing their cool, and you shall apologize too if you did break a rule, even if there is an explanation for it. Because talking back, taking an attitude and explaining aren't the same thing. Except to many parents they are, which is why they're asking. I think kids who talk back have authoritarian parents. These types of parents aren't interested in listening to their child's side, so it's easy for them to label your side as bad behavior, i.e. talking back, which is disrespectful and you shouldn't do it. BC, it's bad behavior. I was always accused of talking back. Even when I tried to use a nice tone and listen, no one listened to me. I'm going to remember that as a parent. Listen to kids, people. They aren't always right, but they deserve to be heard. Even if they are being unreasonable, it's your job as a parent to explain why they are wrong. Don't be a lazy parent like mine. My parents are like that. I can be as calm as I can be and I'm still told I'm talking back or being disrespectful. Because explaining is ownership, accountability and responsibility, and talking back is blame, excuse and deny. I listen more when it starts without blame. I'm only 19, but I do have 4 nieces and a nephew that I've been babysitting, helping to babysit pretty regularly since I was 13. I think it's definitely the way you explain that makes the difference. If you wait for your parent to finish and then say something like, okay, I get why you think that, but then that's explaining. If you interrupt them and raise your voice and give off aggressive body language, then that's arguing, not to mention disrespectful. It's the same in every situation. It doesn't matter who you're disagreeing with. If you do it in a polite and calm way, you A. boost your own reputation, B. reach a conclusion faster, and C. leave the disagreement feeling much better than if you'd turned it into an argument. Yeah, but if your parent combines the lesson with hitting with each word, then it's not really explaining. It's literally trying to save your butt from something you didn't even do. I strongly recommend all parents, and really anyone who deals with kids, to read the books No Drama, Discipline and The Whole Brain Child. Really changes the way you think about interacting with kids. You have been visited by the healthy spirit of exercise. Boy, you will burn all calories today. If you comment blessed be the health hound, like and subscribe, you magnificent person.